Should small villages with only a few hundred residents be dissolved into their larger surrounding towns? We've seen it go both ways in the Finger Lakes, and today on the show we explore that topic with Clyde Mayor Jerry Fremouw, who has been wrestling with dissolution sentiment in his community for the last several months. Right now it is, at least for the time being, at bay, but Jerry joins us today to talk about the nuts and bolts of that, what that process has actually been like for you guys. Jerry, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
And thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So give us a little bit of an update. Where do we stand right now with dissolution, the process in Clyde?
Right now it seems as the process is on pause. After our first informational meeting that we had with a group of people, it was decided that it was best for us to get together and put some numbers together to actually come up with a complete list of facts and figures, services, things like that for the general public to see before they actually have to make it a decision. That way they can make an informed vote, informed decision. If it takes us a year, it takes us a year. But a couple of the people that were passing the petitions will be on the committee, along with a couple of other community members. So I think we'll get some accurate facts for people to view.
How long has this been going on? What has the timeline been like for when you first started hearing about it to the point where petitions were starting to circulate and things like that?
December. It was December it started. There was a petition that was actually submitted back in December, right around Christmas time, that didn't have enough complete signatures on it, so we were able to not accept that petition. The second petition was started shortly thereafter, I believe, but it's been ongoing since December with both parts of it, and we've been trying to. The first petition, we didn't get as much information out because we were hoping that it would, that it would answer itself supposedly, but it didn't. So the second petition, we were right on it and got information out, and I think the facts led to the decision to put it on pause.
And from your perspective, or from the village's perspective, what does that mean? What will the process be now? We were talking before we came on here. Yep. You said a committee has been formed, and there will be an evaluation of things, right?
Correct. We will go through all facts, all figures. We will come up with a couple of different plans for people to view. We will make sure that everybody knows what services they could possibly lose, what services could be possibly still provided, whether it be as simple as brush pickup all the way to police protection. Mm-hmm. But with each of those services, there's a cost. And when you take away those services, there's also, you don't have that cost. So either way, we've decided to try to come up with a couple of plans for people to look at. They'll look at those plans prior, and then they'll decide from looking at those plans whether they want to move forward with talking about dissolution again. But at least this way we have something on paper for people to view.
What was your logic as you heard about this, as you thought about it? What was your logic behind opposing dissolution and wanting to maintain that sense of community within the village itself?
There was a couple of different things. Identity is a huge thing. I mean, we are the Village of Clyde. Unlike, say, even here in Seneca Falls or even in Lyons, I mean, their townships are named the same.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Village of Clyde, we're the Village of Clyde. We've been the Village of Clyde since 1835. So everybody knows, even when you live in the town, they call themselves from Clyde. Mm-hmm. I mean, identity was a big thing. But the other things are, to start with, even in the beginning, I wasn't for and or against dissolution itself. Mm-hmm. The process is the big thing that I'm against. Right now, the process is people can go out and get 10% of the community signatures or 10% of the registered voter signatures, which is about 110 in our community. Then after they get those signatures, you have 10 days to either accept or deny the petition. Then after that, I mean, there's a time frame that starts once they submit that petition. Within 90 days, you have to have it up for referendum. That 90 days doesn't give you time to put together facts and figures, accurate information to give to people. So it will go to a vote after 90 days, and then after that 90 days, if it's voted to move forward with dissolution, if dissolution is voted yes, then you come up with a plan, which to me is backwards. I firmly believe that if you're going to talk about dissolution, shared services, or even consolidation of services with the town, mm-hmm. I mean, there's other options. It doesn't have to just end with dissolution. There are other options. But if you're going to talk about any of those, you have to have facts and figures for people to look at so they can make a vote based on information and not go to what I call a blind vote. Just go to vote whether you yes or no, whether you want to dissolve, and not know what you're going to end up with once you've dissolved. That's my problem.
One of the, and I want to get into the process a little bit later too, with some of those issues, because it's a state handed down process,
is.
right? So that is an issue of itself. That said, one of the interesting questions that popped up on social media that I haven't really heard many people talk about thus far is potential involvement of the school. The school obviously carries Clyde's name in its name. Do you think that the school or the school board or, the ideas from the school should at least be considered in that process too, since there would be such a drastic change within the community itself?
Absolutely. Even though they're their own taxing identity, I mean, I believe that everybody should be involved in putting a plan together or talking about, like I said, whether it's dissolution, consolidation, or shared services, any of that. We're open to anybody's suggestion and anybody that wants to. We're still forming the committee also. I mean, there's a few people that are on it already, but we'll take other volunteers to sit on that committee. And I am currently looking for somebody within the school district to sit on that committee for those facts and ideas that come from the school. Absolutely.
Now, it seems that whenever dissolution comes up, and we've seen it in Lyons and Seneca Falls, Rushville unsuccessfully down in Yates County on the border of Ontario County, the debate tends to get pretty heated pretty fast.
Yes.
You had said, I believe in a letter to the editor probably about a month or a month and a half ago, that it put a lot of strain on the community when this petition was going around.
Yep.
Maybe that was because of misinformation that was in the petition or things people had heard around town or whatever the case may be. Talk to us a little bit about what that strain looked like, even though we are, as you pointed out in the beginning, talking about a relatively small number of people who are actively engaged in the process. Within
that small number, though, there's friends and family members of other people that live in the community that feel totally opposite. So just like politics, when you're talking about presidential elections, you sit at your Christmas dinner table or your Thanksgiving dinner table and you have discussions about things, and you have people that are opposed to and people that are for within the same families. There's a lot of arguing that was happening. I mean, we still hear and see a little bit from Lyons. There's friends and family members there that still don't talk to each other because of the dissolution in Lyons. I don't want to see that for our community. I would rather go through the process like we're going through it so everybody can come to an agreement and see that we've done our due diligence to make sure that we are making the right decision before the decision's made. The worst thing for me is, and I wear it on my sleeve, and I tell people all the time, I mean, there's a lot of things I lose sleep over at night. A big thing is how the community members act towards each other. We're friends, we're families, we all know each other, we talk to each other, but when things end up in an argument, that's not comfortable for me. Right. It's not how I want to see it.
Does it feel like the village is in a better place now going through that process in terms of the strain and sort of the divide within it, having maybe a little more organized approach to it, like that might help this part of it a bit?
Yes, I think it's calmed down quite a bit, actually, since some of the news has gotten out that things are going to go a little bit differently and we're going to actually look at things a little bit differently. A lot of it is quieted down. We've had people call us and say to us they're happy that it's quieted down because they want to make sure they get those facts and figures, and they could feel the animosity between people when they're walking down the street sometimes. So some of all of it's gone away, so that we've seen so far.
You've mentioned the frustration that you see with the process, the way New York State lays it out for a village to be dissolved or incorporated into a town. And it's not new, obviously. But when you think about the process and how it can sometimes just become essentially a snowball gaining steam running down a hill, is there a bit of concern that this could just be something that kind of becomes an inevitability, given that a petition could come up every year or every other year or whatever the case may be until it does finally get across the finish line?
Absolutely, because if you continue to pass the petitions, eventually you're going to get enough votes. I mean, eventually. There's a lot of things that could change with the way that it's handled. There's a lot of things that could change, that the state could change in the way it's handled. I feel the state could be more successful in the process if they go back and they look at the law and make some changes to the law. There's mayors within the New York State that would sit on that committee for them or give them ideas that would help facilitate different things, because every community is different. Not every community needs to dissolve, not every community needs to exist, I guess. But for the most part, we all have some of the same problems. We all have some of the same achievements. And I think to reach most of those, we could work together to do that. But the biggest thing is to changing the law and the way it reads and how it works. I mean, we have to do that first to make it, to me right now, it's a lot of wasted money and a lot of wasted time and effort on a lot of people's behalves. I mean, there's been 3-4 dissolutions, I believe. And I think there's probably been, 20, 30 petitions put in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very low number that are actually successful. I think if they relook at the way the petitions are put in and relook at the way that it's put forward, I think sometimes it could be more successful. Because like I said, I sit here and I'm not for or against. It's not about my position. It's about doing what's right for the community and about what's right for the people that want you to do it. So if dissolution is what they said they wanted to do, then we would have to put our best foot forward and make sure that's done right. But I want to make sure it's done right and in the right fashion.
Did the village hear from the town of Galen at any point in this process concerns or even residents voicing concern about the prospect of being dissolved into?
Correct. We heard from a number of town residents, not necessarily the town board, but a number of the town residents because of the fact that they're not included in this process.
Yeah, which is another major issue that
Correct.
always comes up.
Yes, their opinion in this process does not matter, unfortunately, and that's not me saying that. That's what the state law has put into place. When it comes to dissolution, the village residents get to vote on it, and the town residents get what's left.
Now, taking that a step further, and this is one of the things that one of my personal frustrations with the dissolution process is that no matter what plan is actually constructed through that process, none of it holds any water, right?
Correct.
So after the day after dissolution happens, it can all be thrown into the recycle bin and just move forward. Is that another piece of this that at least makes you nervous about the prospect of possibly dissolving, even if there is a very responsible, careful look at this thing?
That's one of the biggest pieces, because right now the way the process is set up, you go through the process, and then after you make the vote and it's voted yes, you actually put together a plan. But after the time frame of that plan, and you put that together with the town and other people, there's nothing in the law that states the town of Galen has to, or any town, not just the town of Galen, any town has to stay with that plan. They could throw the plan out.
Right.
Even in the town of Lyons, there was parts of the plan they used, other parts of the plans they didn't use at all. It's a lot of wasted time and effort on a lot of people's behalves, and that's why I think that the process, the way we're doing it, it'll hold everybody's feet to the fire. Whether they have to stick with the plan or not is irrelevant, because morally and ethically, if they sit there with us and they put a plan together, and some town residents are involved with putting this plan together, it should hold their feet to the fire and make them think they want to stay with the plan, because other people are going to be aware of what's going on.
One of the concerns that we heard through this process was that some of the struggles, or at least part of the struggle of downtown Clyde, can be attributed to higher taxes or whatever the case may be related to the village's existence. So how did you go through how did you approach debunking that, and how do you actually feel about that given the sort of state of upstate economics in general? Well,
we have done, since I took office 16 years ago, and the village board as a whole has worked together. I mean, we haven't raised taxes in all those years. It's either stayed flat or we've lowered taxes. We've gone from 18.7, I think, dollars a thousand to now 13.4, I think it is, $13.40 per thousand. So we've gone down quite a bit, and we continue to go down. We try to stay at the minimals we can, and we're trying not to raise taxes at this point. And with each year, we look at different ways to save money. I mean, you go back to consolidation, and even consolidation of shared services could save more money to where we could lower the tax rate even more. So we're doing our best at lowering those tax rates. We understand it's a concern. It's a concern all over New York State, not just with village taxes, but even sometimes with town and county taxes and your state taxes. We're the highest, I think, in the country with state taxes. So we are concerned with it. We continue to work at it, but we try to get the best for our money. We try to do the best for our tax dollars. We try to have enough events in our community that offsets some of the negativity of not having other things. And we're not the only downtown struggling. You know, we're not the only village that's struggling with our downtown area. It's every village in New York State, because of the fact that, people need 2 or 3 things. They don't go to 2 or 3 different stores anymore. It's not like the old days. They go to a big Walmart or somewhere to pick up those 2 or 3 things all at once.
Yeah.
So we need to find those unique things to put within our storefronts to help us. It's not a fix overnight. There's nothing that's going to fix it overnight, but more businesses, more people living in our community, and our house sales in the community are tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, the house goes on the market and it sells quickly. So, I mean, hopefully that's a positive.
Yeah. When you think about that, does it not concern you a little bit that, if the village were to dissolve, downtown would at least lose part of its sort of advocacy? Because I would assume the village as a board, as an entity, does a lion's share of the advocating for downtown and for its growth and for everything else. So if it were to be dissolved, would that not be a net loss for downtown?
I believe yes, because there's a lot of groups, communities, and organizations, that are involved with the village through grant processes and other things that push for businesses downtown, whether it's the Main Street grant, which gave the businesses money to fix up the outside of their buildings, which we just received a couple years ago and went through a process, or if it's like our SPAN organization or our SOAR organization, which are two different organizations that we have in the community that help our community members with facade grants and or just local business grants. A lot of that money goes away when you don't have a village. There's a lot of that funding that's only available to villages and not towns.
Mm-hmm. I can already hear somebody listening right now saying to themselves or saying out loud, Josh, there's fat to be trimmed. I don't know where it is, but there's fat to be trimmed. I've looked at the village budget, and I have to say, compared to a lot of other communities, it doesn't appear as though there's much. It seems that you guys operate on a pretty lean basis. Walk me through what you say to those folks who feel like, there probably is an opportunity to cut something somewhere, share a service somewhere, to maybe cut $100,000 or $200,000 or something like that. What is your answer? Or what is the answer?
Those are the things that would come up when you get this group together and we start having some open meetings with the group that's going to be doing this putting these numbers together, because that's when you may have to make the tough decisions. Mm-hmm. What services are you willing to give up to save that $10 a month? What services are you willing to give up to save that $20 a month? What services can we share, or what equipment can we share to save that $10 or $20 a month? I mean, when you talk $200-$300 a year, that adds up pretty quick for most people.
Yeah.
But those are when those tough decisions have to be made. I mean, simple things like brush pickup, the harder decisions like police services.
Yeah.
I mean, we did the calculation with our police services, and our police department budget is under $200,000 a year. If we were to get rid of the police department entirely tomorrow, it would save everybody about between $10 and $15 a month. $10 and $15 a month. So do you want to give up your local police force for $10 or $15 a month? That's not a decision for me to make. That's a decision for us to sit down and look at these numbers and go through that with that group and talk about different things that we can share services and or get rid of to save money.
I'm sure someone listening is going to be curious. What is the police department? What does that police force consist of in Clyde?
Our police department is all part-time. There's no full-time police officers. There's no benefits. Our police department budget, I think, is between, and I'm going to do a ballpark, it's between $150 and $170 a year. That's equipment, that's officers, that's everything. So it's very minimal. It's not like we have a large police department budget. When you talk about different areas, I mean, and I keep talking about the Lions right now. I mean, Lions had a police department budget that was $1 million plus a year.
Yeah.
When they got rid of the village and got rid of that police department, they saved everybody $400 or $500 a year, just police department budget alone. Mm-hmm. We don't have that benefit because we've trimmed the police department. When I first took office, one of the first things we did was move to a part-time police department. And it may not be perfect. We may not have the best coverage all the time, but we're working at that. But, we also pay the county for services for that coverage also, and they've done good with us, working with us with our schedules. And maybe in the future, if that's something people decide, we could take a look at that also. But right now, I mean, there's a major shortage of police officers in every community. Nobody wants to get into the business anymore, and I can't really say that I blame them at this point in time. Yeah. It's a tough time. So, I mean, they're not the highest paid officers in the world, not the lowest paid officers in the world, but that's about where we stand with that. I mean, we try to keep that as minimal as everything else.
Yeah. Curious, there's always a lot of discussion about what taxes will be when you dissolve or when dissolution happens. Not usually as much about what taxes will be 3, 5, 10 years from now. There are other communities, and I'm not going to name names, but there are other communities in the region that have not been as lucky to see taxes stay as low as they were the day dissolution happened. Is that one of the things that you hope this committee at least thinks about and takes into consideration when they are going through this process, weighing the X's and O's and whether this is a good idea or not?
Absolutely. It's something you have to put into place, maybe even a 5-year to a 10-year plan, because there's funding that may be available when you first dissolve through the state, but that funding quickly goes away, and there's no guarantee for that funding to be there tomorrow. And that funding is the reason why some of these communities' tax rates have gone up, because it's started to go away for them because it's only available for a certain amount of years. But yes, after you get rid of some services and some of the community members come back to you and say, look, we still like our brush pickup. Can we start having the town now do our brush pickup? I mean, that's a cost. So that's why you see your tax rates start to go back up again. And most have creeped up a little bit. Not any of their faults. It's just because of the number of services they're being required to provide now. Because before it was, like I said, 2 entities providing them. And yes, when you talk about the taxes, yes, you got a town and you got a town and county and you got a village tax bill. When you get rid of the village tax bill does go away. What people don't understand also is that on that town tax bill, living inside the old village limits, you have different, different committees or different lines on the tax bill because districts, that's what I'm trying to say. You have different districts on that tax bill because now inside the village limits you have a sidewalks tax bill. You have a streetlights tax bill, which we just upgraded all our streetlights to LED lights. So there's different things that will be added on to the people that lived inside the old village limits tax bill.
Yeah. Because
the whole town isn't responsible for that. It's just us who live within the old village limits who are responsible for that. Yeah. So even though you go down to one tax bill, you still add things onto that tax bill to cover some of the services you're still being provided within the old village limits.
Now, were there any, through the process that you've been through so far, were there any arguments made by any of the pro-dissolution folks that gave you pause, that made you think, gee, maybe this is a good idea, or maybe there is an opportunity here to possibly work something out? What was there anything that prompted itself and made you think about that a little more?
I think about it as a cost savings every day. You want to save everybody as much money as you can every day. So that's the biggest thing that makes me thinking about it. Because all of us, anybody that's having trouble paying their bills, anybody that's having trouble paying their taxes, you want to give them as much of a break as you can.
Yeah.
And if there is a cost savings, if we can prove that, if there's a $400 or $500 cost savings per resident a year, I mean, we should be thinking about that. It's not something that we should take lightly and not really think about. I mean, the biggest things that I think most people will miss are the fact that you have your town board, and you have your town offices, and you have your village board and your village offices. I mean, you're taking away one of the most reachable or obtainable levels of government that there is. I mean, people got to take that into consideration. My phone rings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If I don't answer it, I call people back. All that goes away. I mean, who are you going to call?
Yeah.
I mean, they got to take that into consideration.
So what's the next step look like in terms of when this committee could start getting together? Will the public be invited to these meetings? What will that process look like? And when do you think, I'm not asking for exact dates, but when do you think that will really start to get running?
I'm hoping the committee itself could get together beginning sometime in August. We've had a lot of people around vacations, things that are like that are happening throughout July. So I'm hoping by the end of summer, beginning of August, end of summer, we can get the committee together. And then after the committee gets together and sort of comes up with a plan or a direction that they want to move in, then we'll start opening some of those meetings up to have public meetings also, because the public input is going to be very important in these meetings.
All right, Jerry, appreciate the time. Thanks so much for taking it.
Yep, no problem. Thank you very much again for having us here.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. We will be back live next Monday at 11 a.m. And in the meantime, you can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, or your favorite podcast platform. Thanks again for listening. We will see you next time. Inside the Finger Lakes is a production of FingerLakes1.com digital media. The show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to shows like this one. It's hosted by me, Josh Durso, and if you want to hear archived episodes, visit InsideTheFLX.com. If you have an idea for a show, email it to josh@fingerlicks1.com or follow me on Twitter @FLXJosh, where we keep the conversation going all week long. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you back here next week.